Hello and welcome. I want you to think of me as your personal guide today as we journey back in time to one of history's most incredible sieges. Honestly, this was a battle that, by all accounts, should have ended in complete disaster. But instead, it became this amazing story of strategy, brilliant engineering, and just unshakable faith. So, let's get started. The victory here wasn't just about one single thing. It was this perfect blend of three incredibly powerful ideas. Think of them as the legs of a stool that held up the entire city of Medina against, well, impossible odds. It's a story about being faster, building smarter, and believing stronger than everyone else. So here's the big question. How do you defeat a massive, superior army before they even get to your front door? Well, you win the race against time. This first part of our story, it isn't about swords and shields. It's about getting the right information, a little bit of genius, and a whole lot of digging. The victory didn't actually start with digging a trench. It started with a single piece of intel. See, some allies of the Prophet, the Khuza'a tribe, sent a rider as fast as he could go with this urgent warning. A huge Confederate army, a bunch of tribes all united against Medina, was on the march. That early warning, that was the spark that lit the fuse for the entire defense. And when I say huge, I really mean it. The enemy force was over 10,000 strong. To give you some perspective, that was the biggest, most powerful army ever put together to attack Medina at that point. The threat wasn't just serious, it was existential. This was it. Now this is where it gets really interesting. It shows you the most critical factor of all: time. The messenger, traveling light, made the journey in 4 days. But the massive army, with all its gear and supplies, took about 12. That gap, that golden window of about 8 days, that's what turned the impossible into the possible. So, with the clock ticking, Salma the Persian comes up with this brilliant, totally unheard of idea. You see, Medina was naturally protected on most sides by hard volcanic rock and tight-knit buildings, but the north, wide open. His idea was to dig a massive trench, a tactic nobody in Arabia had ever seen before. It was genius because it was designed to completely shut down the enemy's biggest advantage, their cavalry. An army built for speed is totally stumped by a giant ditch it can't cross. And just look at the sheer scale of what they were up against. We're talking about a trench that's almost 2.5 kilometers long, wide enough and deep enough to stop a horse dead in its tracks. They had to move something like 30,000 cubic meters of earth and rock. And they did it all with basic hand tools in the freezing cold while they were literally starving. So, how long did this unbelievable task actually take? Well, there are two schools of thought on this. The famous narrations talk about a miraculous 6 days. But if you look at it logically, just the sheer amount of work involved suggests it probably took somewhere between 2 weeks and a whole month. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. Whether it was a miracle of divine speed or a miracle of human endurance, getting that trench dog was an absolute game changer. Now, while all this digging was happening, keeping morale up was everything. At one point, the workers hit a boulder that was just impossible to break. So the Prophet himself comes over, strikes it 3 times, and with each strike, a spark flies. He sees these sparks as signs, as prophecies of future victories over the great empires of Persia, Syria, and Yemen. Right there, in a moment of total crisis, he's giving them this huge, global vision to hold on to. Okay, the trench is finished. The enemy is at the gates. The city is holding its breath. Now the really hard part begins, the siege. For 22 long, grueling days, the two armies basically just stared at each other across this big ditch. The Confederate army was completely confused. Their whole game plan, a quick, overwhelming cavalry charge, was totally useless. The whole thing became this incredibly tense standoff, a war of nerves, with just some archery duel here and there. The pressure was immense. A few of the enemy's most famous champions, including this legendary warrior named Amr ibn Abd Wud, actually found a narrow spot and managed to get across. Amr, full of arrogance, starts challenging the defenders to a one-on-one fight. And the one who steps up is Ali ibn Abi Talib. In a duel that became legendary, Ali defeated the champion. Let me tell you, that was a massive, massive blow to the enemy's morale and a huge boost for the defenders. Okay, so the defenders have the trench on their side. They just won a major duel that got everyone fired up. It kind of seems like they're holding on, right? But with an enemy army sitting right outside your city, what could possibly make things any worse? Treason. Right from the inside. The Banu Qurayza tribe, who lived inside Medina's southern border and had a peace treaty, broke that treaty and sided with the enemy. All of a sudden, the city was trapped. You've got the enemy at the trench in the north, and now a new enemy has just appeared in the undefended south. The city was completely, terrifyingly exposed. There's a verse in the Quran that just perfectly captures this feeling. It says, "And hearts reach the throats." I mean, can you imagine a better description for that level of fear and total despair? The pressure, physically, psychologically, spiritually, was at its absolute peak. It felt like all human options had run out. When the defenders were pushed right to the very edge, the end didn't come from some final bloody battle. No, the answer came from somewhere else entirely. After trying every single human strategy they could think of, the prophet turned to the one weapon they had left: prayer. He begged God to defeat the enemy. And the answer came not with more soldiers, but with the forces of nature itself, a bitter, freezing wind, and a sense of pure terror that just washed over the enemy camp. On this one dark, freezing cold night, a storm came down on the enemy camp. And this wasn't just some bad weather. This was a force of nature that ripped their tents out of the ground, put out all their fires, knocked over their cooking pots, and just filled them with this horrible dread. Their will to fight was completely broken. By the next morning, that massive army was just gone. They had retreated in total chaos. Now, let's step out of the past and into the present. As your guide, I really want to take you to the very ground where all of this happened, a place where you can still feel the echoes of this incredible battle today. So if you visit Medina today, right at the base of Mount Silla, you'll find an area that most people call the Seven Mosques. Now, here's a little historical fact for you. There weren't actually 7 mosques here during the battle. These were more like guard posts and prayer spots, and over the centuries, people built small mosques there to remember them. The 2 most important ones to see are Masjid al-Fath, the Mosque of Victory, built right where the Prophet prayed for that divine help, and Masjid al-Raya, where the command banner was planted. So when you do visit, I want you to remember this. The ground you're standing on holds the story of men who worked nonstop, literally tying stones to their stomachs to fight off the hunger pangs, all to protect their city and their faith. Their sacrifice is the reason for the peace that came after. We've talked through the intelligence, the engineering, the incredible faith that made this all happen. We've seen the strategy and we felt the desperation. But how does a story like this really come alive? How does it go from being words in a history book to something you feel in your heart? It comes alive by walking the path of those heroes, on the very land that saw it all happen. For those of you who want to take that journey, to stand where they stood and really feel the history for yourself, well, there are guides ready to walk those paths with you. Thank you so much for joining me on this tour today. I really hope it's helped bring this incredible story to life for you.